Hello, everybody. Hopefully, you can all see us and hear us. We're so thrilled that you could join us for our virtual Achieving Teaching Excellence Across Maths webinar. I'm Hayley Hughes, and I'm Head of Education at Iris Connect, and I'll be hosting this webinar this afternoon. You're going to hear from some of our brilliant PD leads in some of the multi-academy trusts within our Iris Connect community. We've got Layla from Windsor Academy Trust, Kate from Hales Valley Trust, and Stacey and Vicky from Diverse Academies. Now, we know that leading PD at scale across multiple contexts can be an incredibly complex business. And one of the ways to do this with fidelity may be through using coaching to become more attuned to the bespoke staff needs. And Windsor Academy Trust have done exactly that. So I'd like to welcome Layla Palmer, who is Head of Professional Learning and Talent at Windsor Academy Trust. Hi, Layla. How are you?
Hi, Hayley. I'm really good, thanks. See you?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. It's great to see you again virtually. And
I have to say, I love the start to this session as well. How exciting.
it was, wasn't it? And you were at our conference speaking as well. So it must be great to kind of see some of the pictures of that as well. Because when you're speaking, you don't get to kind of take it in as much, do
Absolutely.
you? So it's great to have you here with us again. Thank you so much for joining us. I believe that you're going to be presenting on how you facilitate trust-wide instructional coaching. Also, as well, I should say to anybody joining us, welcome. If you have any questions for Layla at all, please pop them in the comments on whichever social media channel you're watching on. We're live streaming against a few of them, and we'll pose those questions to Layla at the end. And I'm really looking forward to this, Layla, because I miss your session at our conference. So I'll shut up now and pass over to you.
Fab. Thank you. Thanks, Hayley. That's brilliant. So, yes, to just introduce myself, as Hayley said, my name's Layla Palmer. I am Head of Professional Learning and Talent at Windsor Academy Trust, and just very passionate about teacher professional development. Really see the value in supporting teachers to be the best that they can be. And at our trust we very much live by the words of Dylan William in when he echoes about how every teacher needs to improve, not because they're not good enough, but because we can all be that even better. So that's very much the heart of what we do. And we know that the thing that has the biggest impact on students and their life chances is having a great teacher in front of them. So today I'm going to share with you some of the insights into our approach to instructional coaching, and where we really strive for that optimal balance between high alignment and high autonomy across our schools. So where we use a tight but loose framework, we try to make sure that we give that centralized support and training and resources that really support schools with their approach to instructional coaching, whilst at the same time allowing for individual schools to really contextualize their approach and make it as relevant as possible for their teachers and their students in their schools. So I'll also be sharing with you some examples of what this looks like in some of our schools. So to start off, just a brief introduction to instructional coaching, and I say brief, literally a minute or two, for those of you that don't know much about about instructional coaching at all. So our definition that we use in our trust is how instructional coaching is this approach to professional development in schools. It's a mechanism where we try and help teachers improve by giving them, and these key words here, regular, bite-sized action steps based on a short drop-in observation. So that's what we would summarize instructional coaching and the approach to instructional coaching as being. And how that relates to traditional professional development. So, why is there a need for instructional coaching as opposed to the traditional methods of traditional teacher professional development? Well, in the words of Antonio and Kyriakides here from the University of Cyprus, around how traditional teacher professional development, and we've got this graphic here that represents that traditional method where you perhaps have a facilitator, someone leading a CPD session with a whole group of staff, and the words here really are driving home the point about, you know, most teacher professional development training opportunities remain fragmented, often poorly aligned with curricula, inadequate to meet teachers' needs and their individual priorities for improvement. So what instructional coaching aims to do is to really meet teachers where they're at rather than address needs of a whole cohort of teachers all in one CPD session. And it's not to say that there's not a place for traditional professional development. For example, when you're getting a certain message across or imparting knowledge on a particular topic, for example, that all teachers need to know about, then perhaps at times that is the most appropriate method. But what we want to do is really help teachers each individually develop their own classroom practice. And like I say, meeting teachers where they are at. We know that there's this huge, this strong evidence base behind instructional coaching for doing exactly that, for supporting teachers in the areas that they most need it. And Sam Sims here refers to instructional coaching as being one of those best bets. So we know that there are a number of things that we can do to improve teacher effectiveness, and most will have some sort of impact, but we want to embrace those strategies and those approaches that are going to have the biggest impact. And that's why we've really embrace the whole instructional coaching approach at Windsor Academy Trust. So I said I was going to talk to you about striving for that optimal balance between how we get a high alignment and a high autonomy across our schools. So what do we mean by this high alignment and high autonomy? Well, we know that alignment across all of our schools will ensure that we're all pushing towards that same goal and sharing that common purpose. So, but we also know that having autonomy for teachers is and across schools is a property of highly effective agile teams. So essentially what we want to do is ensure that we're in this top right quartile here, where we've got this aligned autonomy, where we're not offering this autocratic process or system across our schools where we haven't got anarchy, where everyone's just doing whatever they want to do, but we've got a real clear strategy and approach to what we do with instructional coaching, where staff feel and coaches and teachers feel supported with the support that we give from the central team, whilst also empowered to do what's right for their individual schools. So we'll start here by talking a little bit about how we attempt to adopt this high alignment, high autonomous approach with our schools. So to start with, I'll talk about the active ingredients. So when we talk about active ingredients, they're the elements of instructional coaching for us that we say we must implement in all of our schools if that instructional coaching is to be effective. So all of our schools must make sure in whatever program they implement or whatever approach they take that it's got these elements. So a bite-sized area for improvement, a clear model of better, what better looks like. And this is great where we can bring in examples of utilising Iris there, using some clips of our own teachers in our own schools, demonstrating what great looks like in whatever strategy we're focusing on. We make sure that all our approaches build in use of deliberate practice. So making sure teachers can practice beforehand, before going live in the classroom, and that building up that opportunity for practicing that standardised routine. So we make sure all schools know that that's a core. These are core elements that must be included in their instructional coaching plans. We also make sure that all our schools follow this particular coaching cycle. So there's a drop-in of around 10 to 15 minutes from a coach into the person that they're coaching, that teacher's lesson. And that's then followed up within the same week, and ideally as soon as possible, with a coaching conversation where the coach gives feedback. They agree on an action step together, and that, like I said, they're building that deliberate practice all within that coaching meeting, all taking space ideally within the shortest time frame possible, so within a week. That's then followed up by that teacher attempting to embed whatever action step was agreed in the coaching conversation into a lesson. And ideally that should span, there should be a week between each of these, no more than a week between each of these steps. And then that's closing that loop on what's happening with the approach there. So we say that all our schools should follow these steps within the coaching cycle and should attempt to keep that time frame as tight as possible. We also suggest that all our schools follow Paul Bambrick-Santayo's model, 6-step model for coaching conversations. So we've got the 6 steps that are identified here. It can be summarised as see it, name it, do it. So we say that this is the structure that all coaching conversations should effectively take and follow. So we're talking a lot about, in the past 3 slides that I've just gone through, that high alignment element, the core parts or core elements that all schools need to adopt in terms of their approach. And then we start to move into, okay, so where's the autonomy here? So when we're identifying suitable coaches across our schools, yes, we look for all of these things. So we make sure the leaders of teaching and learning, or the leaders of instructional coaching, know that we have to have teachers with a track record of exceptional student outcomes, really strong teachers, strong repertoire of pedagogical knowledge. And equally as important as both of those things are, that those teachers have really great interpersonal skills and are able to develop those strong relationships of trust with whoever they're coaching. So we say yes, that's an approach that we should all take across our schools, but each individual school goes about selecting those coaches in their own way, in terms of, for example, how many coaches they're going to have. So some of our bigger schools might have quite large teams of coaching, perhaps 1 or 2 coaches in each faculty. And in some of our smaller primary schools, for example, it might be that they only have the capacity to work with their ECTs. So we don't try and enforce the fact that every person must be coached across the school, or every person at the same time must be coached across the school, or we don't say how many coaches need to be used. So each of our schools really adopt different types of models to how they go about selecting their coaches, and how they build in that time for coaching to happen as well. So some of our schools, for example, will have coaching at a certain time every week. So it might be every Wednesday afternoon coaching conversations happen. It might be that some of our schools have dedicated periods where on their timetable that are allocated to coaches for those coaching conversations to happen. But essentially, all of the schools have different times and different models for when that coaching happens. And in fact, just this morning, I've been working with one of our new head teachers of one of our new free schools that's going to be opening in September. And there we're looking at how they're going to build in a part of instructional coaching, so the deliberate practice element, with all of their staff pretty much every morning. When students are doing their retrieval practice, all the rest of the staff are going to go and work on the deliberate practice. So lots of different models are adopted there. And the same goes for the training and development part of how we train and develop our coaches. So we have a central offer of training for all coaches at the start of each academic year, where we do 3 sessions: an introduction to instructional coaching and exploring the basics and the evidence base behind it. We then do a session on highest leverage action steps, and then one on deliberate practice. This year, in fact, we're doing that slightly differently, where we're combining that into a whole day's training, where myself and some of the key members of staff across the central team and some school staff that are really expert in instructional coaching help to deliver a central offer to all our coaches. But then what happens is we work individually with the leads in the schools to develop through the year some bespoke coaches workshops, and we develop those based on what each individual school needs. So, for example, just over the last year, we've worked with some of our schools on, for example, how we might increase complexity when doing deliberate practice. We've worked with others specifically about how we might script coaching conversations. So it's all very different based on the needs of that school. Our central training offer, as well as those workshops that we deliver collaboratively with school leaders, are also supplemented in a number of our schools by some further school-led training that takes place. And again, that really helps to make sure that the individual challenges faced by that school or individual challenges faced by the coaches in those schools are addressed within that training. So, for example, one of our larger secondary schools really wanted to go above and beyond what we're offering centrally, and I'll come on to talk to you about how they adopt a waterfall model of coaching. In just a moment, I'll speak about that in a bit more depth. In regards to the resources that we offer our schools as well, so we've collectively across all of our schools come together to create our coaches handbook with key guidance in there. So all the schools have access to that document. However, some of the schools have decided to adapt and amend that to make it more contextual for themselves and add in elements that they feel are necessary, that they need. And that's fine. We also offer all of our schools, all the teachers, not just coaches, all the teachers have got access to the Tom Sherrington and Oliver Cavigloli teaching walkthroughs on their iPads. So we've got electronic versions of those for all our teachers that they can help to use them when they're having their coaching conversations. We also suggest lots of other resources that might be beneficial and useful to them. So there are a range of books that we've got here, and schools really take a hybrid of the approaches that are discussed in these books. We have a Google Classroom as well, where we share various blogs for all of our schools, and the leaders in those schools can really pick and choose what they want to work more with their coaches on and which resources they like to utilise the most. So again, thinking about that, making sure that we're having those high levels of autonomy there in the schools. Like I said, lots of different models are utilised. Particularly here, I've got an example of one of our schools, our large secondary school. And I said that their coaching, how they train their coaches, they employ this waterfall model. And what that means is they make sure that any coach is first coached by somebody else before that they can go and coach others. And what that really does is making sure that only the very best and the experienced coaches are able to go and coach others across the school. We've got other examples here of where schools will implement trying to build a culture of deliberate practice across the school, and they do that in different ways. So we've got one school that does that by integrating deliberate practice into all of their faculty meetings each week. We've got another one of our primary schools that do whole school deliberate practice every half term. They all come together as part of CPD sessions and build that into their whole school approach to CPD. And like I said, just this morning, we've been planning for our new free school, how we're going to really build a culture of deliberate practice by doing that pretty much every morning with all the teachers across the school. So that's really helping to support the whole approach to instructional coaching. And I will finish off by talking what's very critical to us is this, which hopefully you've seen through what I've spoke about, is about this whole collaboration approach that we have between the central team and central staff and our school leaders and school coaches. So we have these teaching and learning summits once every term where we all come together to collaborate on how we lead instructional coaching, and we have the opportunity to share best practice amongst our schools, what's working and what isn't. We also are really keen to collaborate on resource development. So like I mentioned, that coach's handbook, that's come together through collaboration, through our leaders across the trust, but also really working and utilising Iris and utilising the tool that we've got there to build up banks of clips that we can use to help support our instructional coaching, particularly that element of where we're modelling what good looks like. And so next year, we're going to build on that even further with the introduction of the instructional palette that's available with Iris as well. And then finally, the last point on there I've got about how our teaching and learning strategic lead works very much on the ground in schools, working as a coach with teachers and helping to support each individual school's approach to instructional coaching on the ground, as well as just from afar at the central team. And that is the end of my presentation. So if there are any questions,
that's
feel
great.
free
Thank
to.
you so much, Layla. Yeah, I mean, what I find so kind of interesting, I think about Windsor Academy Trust in particular, and the way that you developed your coaching program, is really how you're not about a one size fits all approach. It's very much bespoke to teachers' needs. You know, you stressed about meeting teachers where they are, and I think that's very empowering rather than a very directive model of you must do this at this time. You know, that's what I find so fantastic about what is going on at Windsor Academy Trust. I mean, we've had a few questions come in, two that I've picked out, which I think are really relevant, and I'd like to know the answer to as well. The first one is, and it's really related to this one size fits all approach. How might you adapt your coaching, or how do you adapt your coaching for more experienced teachers as well? Because the books that you had on there, the approach that you're talking about, I think it's very obvious, I think, how that fits for novice teachers, but how do you go about adapting that for more experienced?
And I suppose that is the approach that we take to training our coaches in the first
Yes.
instance. And it's very much in that first session that we deliver about what is instructional coaching. And when we talk about the evidence base behind it, we talk very much about the spectrum that coaching can fall on, how it can be very directive where it's needed, where perhaps you're working with ECTs, to far more open-ended type approach. And what we say is the ideal is somewhere in the middle. You want a
Yes.
dialogical approach either way, where it's a two-way process where you're engaging with the person that you're coaching with. um, but I suppose it is about making
Mhm.
sure that, one, that you're selecting the right coaches as well, that they've got that expert knowledge, that they can work with the really good teachers to push them on even further,
Yes.
and utilizing things, the resources like Iris and those banks of good clips where we've got excellent teaching that we can really showcase and help work with teachers that are already really good, but that we're just trying to push them that little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the second question is much briefer, and it does link to what you've just said, which is about what role do the video clips that you film with Iris Connect play in the coaching? What do you use them for?
So what we're trying to use them more for as well, and what some of our coaches are using for, is that model of better, that clear
Yes.
model of better. So it's all very well for example, using some of the books we use, like the teaching walkthroughs, to demonstrate how you would break down a strategy. We also say that a coach should always be willing to model themselves to who they're working with, what that looks like. But it's so powerful to be able to show a clip of someone from your own school
Yes.
demonstrating a strategy done really well.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And thank you so much again, Layla. It was a pleasure to see you again and to hear you speak about the brilliant work that's going on at Windsor Academy Trust. So thank you so much, and I hope we can
Thank
catch
you,
up soon.
Haile.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, what a brilliant start. Layla spoke to us all about coaching, and obviously, coaching is a really great way to ensure that professional development is attuned to staff need. But actually, in order for coaching to be effective, we have to first create the right culture and climate for learning to take place. And I'm delighted now to welcome Kate Hall, who's Director of Education at Hales Valley Trust. And Kate will be speaking exactly about this, about developing a professional learning culture. So again, if you've got any questions at all for Kate, please do leave them in the chat in whatever social media you are using for this live stream, and we'll pick them up at the end. Hi, Kate. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to hear what you're going to be chatting about. So I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thanks for having me. It was really interesting to hear Layla's presentation, and you will hear some common messages coming through when I talk to you. I'm going to share with you how our all primary trust has developed a professional learning culture underpinned by the use of coaching and the use of Iris. Now, I've decided to talk you through the process right from the beginning of the implementation to where we are now. So we began our journey really by thinking about how adults learn. It was really important that we've done a lot of research on how children learn, and it was important that we engaged in research on how adults learn to maximise our professional learning culture. So we applied the basic principles of how adults learn and used this to impact on our coaching strategy. We found that most adults are autonomous and wanted to be in control of their own learning. And as individuals and as we mature, we find that this motivation is driven from an internal desire, so from intrinsic motivations. So based on basic assumptions that underpin this, we had to devise a professional learning culture where the adults were motivated to learn, not because they weren't good enough, but because they could be even better. So with the end in mind, I think it's always important that we start with the end in mind. So when I'm talking, you can keep it in context. So as you know, teaching is complicated, and as an all primary trust, we needed to provide staff with the tools and strategies to be the best that they could be. As a trust, our intent is always to improve the quality of teaching across our schools. As we know, there are no improvements of pupil outcomes without improvement in teaching, and there's no improvements in teaching without effective professional development. So over a period of time, I've worked to develop a programme of professional development that would develop our staff and the quality of teaching using research-informed strategies that would impact on our children in the classroom. So the current model that I'm going to share with you is for almost 100 members of staff. So that's teaching staff, PPA staff, HLTAs are all part of this process across our school. All of these staff have at least a half-termly coaching session where they share an IRIS recording linked to a focus from our Howes Valley teaching rubrics, underpinned by a deliberate selection of a teaching walkthrough. And within the coaching session, the member of staff is coached by a trained leader using models such as GROW or CLEAR to help them move further forward. A coaching culture has really developed across our schools, but not just in formal lessons. We use it in corridors, classrooms, staff rooms, and meetings. So the coaching culture, so where did we start? Well, since 2016, leaders have worked really hard to build and sustain this coaching culture across our schools. This year, we've codified the approach so that there's a quality of provision and opportunities of professional development for all staff in all of our schools. So coaching really is at the heart of our trust, and it's worked hand in hand with IRIS Connect. So as coaches, we are believers that individuals possess huge potential to resolve their own issues. And as such, the coachee remains responsible for the situation and the solutions. This ensures ownership over actions and next steps, and the accountability stays with the coachee to move forward and improve. So in summary, the coach is involved in the content, so is in control of the content. The coach is in control of the process and the coachee is in control of the content. And within our trust, we develop coaching so that professional development is about helping coaches to learn rather than teaching them. And this way, the coaching focuses on future possibilities and treats past failures as learning experiences, growing a low-threat professional development process. Now, IRIS has allowed this to happen with staff having the opportunity to record, reflect, and re-record if they choose to, so that they can move further forward. We've found that recording not only provides low threat, but once staff have gotten over what they look like or what they sound like, they actually enjoy watching their video, commenting on the techniques that they've used on the IRIS platform, and some even re-recording to polish or perfect something that they evaluated as not being good enough. So our journey started, well, it started a while ago where we trained leaders to be effective in coaching. This was really important as our starting point. We started when the head teacher and I engaged in the power of coaching. Some of you may have come across that through a Levy. And we came back excited and started modelling those coaching strategies. And it didn't take long for our skilled and competent leaders and staff to start querying, why do we never get an answer? Why are we always posed with a question or a thunk to consider? And over a period of time, we developed an understanding of what coaching was, but most importantly, what it wasn't, being clear to distinguish the difference between coaching, teaching, mentoring, and counselling. We then modelled this, explicitly practicing coaching informally in meetings, corridors, staff rooms, and the interest started to spread. It became infectious. And once we'd modelled the skills of coaching, we were then able to make the invisible visible. We were able to model coaching techniques and coaching models to staff. We began talking and explaining and labelling what we were doing, and others began to do the same. This then caused a buzz where staff wanted to find out more. It shifted the culture from direct instruction and teacher talk into more facilitation and coaching. So within 3 years, the school became a flagship school, recognised as a Levy as a centre of excellence in coaching. We had advocates across the school, all trained, and we also facilitated that training for others in our trust schools. It was at this point that we were in a position to formalise coaching and the use of IRIS. And it was paramount that the coaching was a process where staff felt safe to talk, explore, but also be challenged before we were able to move forward with the video technology. So initially we developed a coaching model. So we introduced tutorial time and guidance of what this would look like. And during the tutorial time, staff were released during the school day to have a coaching session every 4 weeks. And that was in a 3-form primary school. We modelled the IRIS principles to discover and develop and share with the coach, but staff were not ready or confident enough to share their videos wider than with their coach at that point. Some staff preferred their coach to watch the lesson prior to the coaching session and add their comments and questions directly to the platform, while others preferred to watch it live in the moment with their coach and have that conversation where they both watch it for the first time. This then became a culture, but this is something that we needed to do in order to move teaching forward and leaders to evaluate the quality of teaching. So soon after, we had to develop the approach from one school and convert it to a model across the trust. So the first year across our trust started with schools being trained as coaches in the models and techniques that we were going to use. Each school nominated an IRIS advocate who led the implementation of IRIS and their coaching cycle in their school. And it was important to have advocates at this point. Not only was there somebody actively promoting the approach, but also some direct accountability for the implementation. And this was built into appraisal and on the school improvement plans. The brief was to use IRIS to record teaching in an aspect of school improvement and provide coaching conversations to follow up and move staff further forward. Schools could choose their coaching model and their timetable, and they could also choose their focus. So some schools chose demonstration writing, reciprocal reading, the use of questioning to deepen understanding in lessons. And this made it low threat because it was led by the school. The advocates were in control. They were motivated and valued to use their expertise and their experience. And therefore, they built staff's confidence and established professional contracting so that people felt safe to record. The iceberg on the slide was the most important tool used for leaders to reflect on the views of staff. What was causing some staff to feel like they didn't want to engage in IRIS and recording of their lessons? Reluctance of some staff to engage was underpinned by the number of factors, such as unsure where the video would be shared, who would see it, how the video would be used, and a misunderstanding of coaching and how the meetings would take place. After a meeting with the advocates, we explored the Triple D model, define, describe and demand, and we discussed the fact that they had not spent sufficient time describing, explicitly modelling and explaining what it would look like, what we would use it for, what the benefits were, what their concerns were, and therefore help them to move forward and really be in a position to be able to demand that this approach happened. By the end of the year, Matt Richardson, who works with IRIS, we invited him to a showcase from each school, and he then offered additional advice on how each school could move forward with their approach. So we were now in a position where staff felt confident to record using IRIS. They were familiar with the platform and how it was used. They were ready to evolve from this, starting from a trust to codify the next stage. And this is where we got to. So we launched a codified approach across all schools that was consistent. All staff have a quality of provision and all leaders have a model that will, over time, mitigate against ineffective teaching in our classrooms. We provided training for coaches. We had a clear launch across the whole of our multi-academy trust, so everybody heard the same message. We have a coaching timetable in every school that happens during the school day, so we're valuing and protecting that time. We have a code book for leaders. So we have a handbook that not only codifies the approach, it also defines, describes and demands what that approach should look like. The school improvement team, so the CEO and myself as Director of Education, we refer to this process in our school improvement visits, and we also evaluate the quality of teaching, looking at some of those outcomes that are shared from the leaders. In addition to that, staff who are not working at a proficient standard in the craft of teaching, we also link our teaching rubrics to add additional support to put in place for them. So as mentioned, teaching is complicated and we need to provide our staff with the tools and strategies to be the best that we can. Therefore, initially, we codified our approach to teaching through the creation of the Trust teaching rubrics, referencing the teaching walkthroughs to support the development of those teaching strategies. Verbal descriptions of teaching are often quite vague and require too much guessing, and asking teachers to watch others' videos sometimes contain too much irrelevant detail, which obscured the essentials that made the technique work. So therefore, we decided to use the walkthroughs because they use both words and static images, and their design was really based on clear decisions about what matters and what should be left out. As a result, they make teaching know-how as accessible as possible, and they shorten the route to understanding. And by making expert pedagogy clear and concise, they have developed classroom expertise in our trust. So every teacher in the organisation can improve through the walkthroughs. So as you can see here, we have a 5-week programme that we've implemented across our trust. In week 1, each school has one staff meeting every half term, and this introduces the walkthroughs that we may be focusing on that half term and allows time to present the materials, share, discuss the models, and provide deliberate practice to role model what they would look like. Every member of staff has a copy of Volume 1, the walkthrough book, and they also have a teacher workbook that we have created and a coaching booklet that they will use when they attend their coaching sessions. In week 2, during day-to-day teaching, staff practice the focus of those walkthroughs. Leaders keep these live. They're displayed in the staff room, and staff add post-its for good practice. On PPA day, leaders drop in and ask about the progress towards these, the strengths, the barriers, the solutions for these, and they keep the language live. During team meetings, walkthroughs are a short standing agenda item where staff can share their successes and be coached through barriers. In addition to that, staff meetings commence with a bring and brag, where key staff share golden nuggets linked to those walkthroughs. And there's a walkthrough that, if there's a walkthrough that's more difficult to master, leaders provide an opportunity for additional modelling and deliberate practice. As we move into week 3, that's when Iris then is used to record. So during week 3, staff record a lesson using Iris Connect and reflect on it by commenting directly onto the platform. During this week, staff record themselves modelling several of the walkthroughs that they have practiced. And the key here is their deliberate choice of those that they have chosen to model. And in the coaching session, they explore why they chose the ones they did and what impact that it had. After the recording, prior to the coaching meeting, staff then comment on the clip using the language from the walkthroughs. This allows time to review and reflect on their practice. It also means that staff go back to the 5 stages of walkthrough and evaluate their successes and what stages need further work. This thinking all commences before the coaching session, again, posing more support and challenge in a low-threat environment. After recording prior to the coaching meeting, the coach may look at the recording before they meet with the teacher. They evaluate the comments that have been made while watching the lesson, and they consider the precise aspects that are not having any positive impact and those that are, and which aspects of the techniques are not yet happening or embedded. And then the coach has time to consider some lines of inquiry to explore. In week 4, this is when, this is about the coachee. So this is when the coaching happens. So every member of staff receives their coaching during this week. The coach will listen to and learn from the coachee. So they will listen to clarify, assess, gauge and engage, and also deepen the understanding and skills of the coachee. They then respond to challenge, strengthen, deepen, but also to clarify. It's so important that the coachee sees their own teaching via Iris, and that the coach, through effective questioning, allows them to see the gap between their practice and the practice modelled via the walkthrough. What's the difference between what we have learned via the walkthrough and what happened in this lesson? And then using the coaching booklet, the coachee captures their own notes, and staff set themselves I commit to statements and to provide themselves a real clear way forward to improve their practice, and then a follow-up date is then planned in. In week 5, that's the refine it. So coaching huddles take place, but while they're taking place, staff in the classroom are working on those I commit to statements. They're refining some of their practice and then moving further forward. Behind the scenes, leaders are engaged in coaching huddles, which take place in either week 4 or week 5 and are led by a senior leader in the school. All coaches attend this, and it provides supervision for coaches while offering collaborative support and professional development if needed. During this time, the coaches use staff on a page to capture the outcomes of the coaching linked to each walkthrough. And you can see an example there on the slide. The purpose of this is for leaders to evaluate the impact of the professional development. In addition to this, it identifies strengths of the school as well as staff who need support to improve further. It also identifies those staff who can share and lead good practice across our multi-academy trust. Teaching staff during week 5, like I said, will continue to practice the walkthroughs from the half term, refining their practice, and leaders will again continually to actively engage in this as they did in week 1 and 2 by joining PPA, standard agenda items and bring and brags. And by continuing this, continue to explore it, staff are less likely to default back to previous practice. So where next? So we're in a position now where we'll continue to use the trust teaching rubrics to self-assess. The staff use that to self-assess where they are. The rubrics then is cross-referenced with the walkthroughs. So we've got what are you struggling with, and the walkthroughs identified to how you can improve your practice in that area. So we will continue with that practice. We'll continue to build in strategies to bounce back and revise and overteach the walkthroughs, just like we would with the children. Building on schools deliberately selecting walkthroughs to address the weaknesses in pupils' learning in the classroom. So whatever's coming out of pupil progress, which walkthroughs can support and enhance the teaching in order to move that forward. And our next stage is research shows that in some instances, coaching is better in teams. And we are mindful that if someone doesn't engage, the softer accountability during group coaching may prevent them from engaging. However, we could explore the use of group coaching to share practice via Iris and help develop the practice of others. So we're now in a position where we can ask staff who are proficient and who have exemplary practice in an aspect of teaching to share their walkthrough recordings to our Trust Iris group. Therefore, we're providing a bank of model practice of key teaching strategies and techniques that can be used to provide additional professional development for staff who need further support. So hopefully, to summarise, that has really talked through our journey right from the beginning, how we embedded this coaching culture, which was important, introduced Iris in a no-threat way where schools could choose. We had advocates there leading that, and how we've codified that across our all primary multi-academy trusts. Has anybody got any questions?
Wow, Kate, I was totally blown away by that. Like the journey that your trust has been on is just absolutely incredible, isn't it? And kind of laying it out like that. I mean, what I loved is the fact that all staff at every level have been involved in being coached in, you know, that because sometimes I go into schools and you might see the teachers engaging in coaching, but not the teaching assistants or not the admin staff, or, you know, and we all know that schools are communities that are made up by lots of different people. I loved the fact that it was dialogic, it was facilitative, it wasn't a deficit model where, you know, you were working presuming that everybody is a novice that needs filling up from the cup of an expert. And I loved Bring and Brag. Absolutely loved that. I'm definitely going to steal that and use it for something else. We've had a couple of questions again. One of them, which I think is a really good question, and lots of people who are watching this and aren't Iris Connect customers may be thinking this themselves, is how actually do you encourage, and you did touch on this, those who are reticent to use video to actually go for it? What tangible stuff did you do?
I think to begin with, it was about them just recording themselves and not sharing it with anybody. So we had to get over the barrier of them seeing themselves on the screen. That's the key thing. What do I look like? What do I sound like? So what we did first, we got some of our more reluctant staff. They weren't sharing it with a coach. It was just them recording it, them reflecting on it, using the platform to reflect and use their comments. Then again, it's just about relationships. It's about establishing relationships, building relationships, then choosing their coach, somebody who they felt they wanted to be coached by, somebody they had professional respect, somebody that they wanted to be part of that process with, which again lowered some of those barriers. But I think it's just been really explicit that they are the only person who can share that video. Nobody else can view that video at all. Because you know yourself, when you're teaching, you open yourself up, you're vulnerable because people are there to reflect. And that's where the culture and the relationships really comes in. And I think those that were reluctant, my key advice would be let them record themselves and reflect on themselves first. Then allow them to choose their own coach, somebody who they feel they've got a good working relationship with, and just be really crystal clear and transparent about how you will use that information once they have recorded it, and that they can't share that information any wider. It's up to the coachee who they share that with.
It's empowering, that, isn't it? Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I think I will leave it there because I'm very conscious of time, and we have got another 2 colleagues that are going to present to us. But thank you so much, Kate. I got so much out of that, and I know that everybody who was watching will have done too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've heard lots of brilliant stuff that's going on in some of the multi-academy trusts that work with us at the moment as our partners. We're about to hear from some more brilliant stuff as well, and this time about observing colleagues. Now, we know that is one of the most impactful ways of developing mental models of what great teaching looks like. And actually, it's just a shame that we don't get to do it more as we become experienced teachers. We do lots of it when we're learning to teach. But with budget cuts, staff absence, recruitment challenges, getting the cover to do that can be really, really difficult. And that is where Iris Connect can help. And Stacey Aesthorpe, who is strategic lead for coaching within the Diverse Association for Professional Learning, it's a big one this, and Vicky Purdy, who is the assistant principal at Eastleigh Academy, are going to be here to share how they have utilised our platform to enable joint practice development through observations. It sounds really, really interesting. So welcome, Stacey and Vicky.
Hi everyone.
Stacey, your job title is quite something. My goodness me, I nearly ran out of breath by the time I was doing it.
Yeah, thanks, Hailey. And can I just start by thanking Kate and Layla, because I think their presentations have actually set a real nice foundation for how Vicky and I are going to explain at a multi-academy trust level how we've embedded work with associated partners such as Iris Connect and Allevi.
Yes.
To empower our staff and move forward. So that's
I'm excited to hear. I'm excited to hear about it. I'm going to leave you both to it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm Stacey, and my colleague Vicky will come in later on this evening as we just delve into 2 case studies around how the Diverse Academies Trust has built projects called Joint Practice Development, which enables our colleagues across our 14 academies to share the best practice. And as I've already spoken about earlier, we're using them through the tools of Iris Connect and our Allevi coaching models. So just a brief overview really around our academy. Our mission, vision and values as Diverse Academies Trust, which consists of 6 primary, 6 secondary and 2 special academies across Nottinghamshire and North Lincolnshire, is the ability for our staff to feel empowered, respect and care. They're our core values. And that sort of underpins everything that our professional development offer encompasses. So what joint practice development actually is an opportunity for us over a 5-year window in our strategic objective to work towards developing a high-performing organisation. And we use the mechanisms of the joint practice development and Iris Connect to share best practice across our trust. And unfortunately, our professional development lead, which is Jamie Tegadine, he can't make it tonight, but we have worked with Jamie to share 2 real success stories around how our trust, which is so large, has been able to come together and share the best practice, which then ultimately should hopefully secure the best outcomes for our students and staff moving forward, in ensuring we try and sustain and develop a high-performing organisation. So really tonight, what we would like to get across is what we're trying to achieve. So Diverse Academies Trust is committed to professionally developing all of our colleagues, regardless of role across our organisation. We feel very strongly that whatever their role is across our academies, that they have a place to play in ensuring that we can secure the best outcomes for our students. So our commitment to professional development through so many different avenues, and you've heard already tonight how coaching can build into that, and the use of the Iris Connect platform are two key mechanisms of how we can start to move our colleagues forward and drive them forward. And it's the exposure to that key practice that is one of my sort of roles as coaching lead across the trust. How do we use these mechanisms to ensure that our colleagues are having the exposure within our trust, that we're sharing that and we're improving the quality of education? And coaching has been a key work stream over the last 18 months and moving forward over the next sort of 5 years to develop this coaching culture. So we're really in our infancy stage at the moment. There are several different ways, and the rationale behind joint practice development is to allow us to collaborate and learn from one another across our academies, across the different stages, to share the good practice and find key findings that the projects that have been going on across our organisation. And the Iris is a great platform for that. And Vicky will come in later and talk about that. But more really is about how do we inspire our colleagues to engage in their professional learning. And what you'll sort of see on our slide there is that in the middle, at the heart of this, is the Diverse Academies Trust moral commitment to growing everybody through the engagement of coaching and embedding coaching into driving our colleagues forward through growing the quality of education and the real technical areas of their role, and developing and growing our future leaders to ensure that we do raise the standard of our teaching and learning across Diverse Academies Trust. But as Layla alluded to at Windsor, very similar, we're aligning our CPD with our trust, but also giving the autonomy to the individual academies to ensure that it's contextualised to their setting, because they're all, as our multi-academy trust says, we're diverse, so every setting is different, and our roles as leaders across that trust is to ensure that we empower staff to make sure that they find joint practice development purposeful. Joint practice development was set up by Diverse Academies Trust just prior to COVID, about 3 or 4 years ago now. And the real bespoke part of joint practice development is the encouraging of colleagues to come together to work on an area of their teaching and learning that they want to drive forward, and use models of best practice, whether that's the walkthrough materials or the Iris Connect videos, to really reflect and drive the conversations, coaching conversations forward, so that staff are taking ownership for their own professional development. So although we have the alignment of trust priorities and individual academy priorities, we really empower staff to take responsibility for their own professional development through an area of which is of their own ownership, and also inspirational, and for them to want to take that forward rather than it being a top-down, done-to model. So there are so many different things that are happening at Diverse Academies of Trust for joint practice development. One of them, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on tonight, is something called Immersion Days, where we invite our leaders to immerse themselves in a different academy for the day, and to take away something from either, if it's a secondary, they'll spend the day within their subject. We invite subject leads from 3 of the 6 academies, so they break into small triads and they immerse themselves into 2 of the 3 academies, because obviously they have a host academy as well. They spend the day reflecting, working with others to see how their subject looks like in another academy, and then they decide what their key takeaway is, and then they work with the others in the triad for areas moving forward for the next time of their visit. And this year we're starting to add in the coaching element there. Once you've immersed yourself into one of the other academies, what are you learning? What are you taking away? How is that impacting back in your setting? And really sort of pushing the ownership of developing subject leads into what does that look like for your faculty. And this year it's happened in secondary, and in the future we're hoping to sort of allow the primary clusters to come together. Another avenue of us coming together are things called strategic development groups, and each CPD lead from all the academies attend a strategic lead group, which very similar to Layla's Teaching and Learning Summits. We have those meetings once a half term to share the good practice, to learn from one another and coach each other around what's best for their setting. But one of the main projects that I'd like to talk to you today is around the Voice 21 pilot project that one of our primary schools has piloted this year in terms of enabling our students to increase the quality of their RSE. So we chose the Wainwright Primary Academy, and John Chapman, the principal there, has invested in a 3-year project with Voice 21 to improve the RSE of our students. And the level of language that has been improving as a result in this 1 year, in John's words, has been remarkable. And I invited him to come tonight. He's so excited about how do we introduce RSE, not only across the academy at Wainwright Primary, but also sharing it across the trust. And what we've found from using the RSE framework is that during Voice 22, the package enables our colleagues to pick an area of the RSE skills that they want to go away in small triads to focus on and then share their best practice. Now, at the moment, we're in our pilot phase with this, and this is happening at Wainwright Primary for the first year for the academy there, and the plan is hopefully for our other primary clusters to take that on board. So the support and the offer that Voice 21 has offered us has been remarkable in the fact that we sign up to modules and look at how we can improve, the students can improve their vocabulary. And what we've found is that the whole staff body at Wainwright have really come on board and got excited because they can actually see the students' development and also staff confidence in actually how do we lead and articulate conversations within our classroom. And some of the feedback that we've had on the slide that I'm just presenting right now gives you key questions and areas and actions to focus on. So very similar to the models that you've seen earlier from Kate, staff were working in triads to identify an area of how they would implement one of the key skills in the 4 RSE skills that Voice 21 are promoting. And through the module, they're working regularly to take a piece of evidence and action it in the classroom. And that research has then been implemented. And through the Iris Connect platform, we've been able to share some of the findings. So this is some of the things we're really proud of. This is how RSE has developed within Wainwright Primary, and students and staff have really driven this whole school area of focus. And now we have colleagues from across the other schools in our school improvement workshops asking to be part of this project. And for us at a multi-academy trust level, our next steps is how do we showcase what's the good practice that's happening here at Wainwright, and how do we share moving forward so that all our academies can really develop in terms of improving the colleagues' confidence in teaching RSE, and also the students' level of language within there. And so our next steps is to use the Iris Connect platform. As you can see, we've got an Iris group set up, and we've got colleagues contributing when they've implemented the strategy, to now the next nudge is to reflect on there. So I'm going to pass over to Vicky, because that's one of our key case studies this year about actually what next. So this is happening at a school level, and the classroom teachers have impacted at Wainwright Primary. How do we influence others across our Academy Trust, and how do we collaborate? And Iris is one of our key mechanisms for this. But also we hold something called a school improvement workshop, And that enables colleagues from across the trust to come and share the best practice. And what I presented to you tonight, in a nutshell, was John's presentation of how proud he is at the end of year one of a 3-year cycle of how the Voice 21 project has really improved the language of our students at one of our primary academies. I'm going to pass you over now to my colleague Vicky, who's going to explain how we've, at a multi-academy trust level, brought colleagues together to collaborate and share their learning and move forward through the something called Focus 5. Thanks, Vicky.
Okay, hi everyone. So yeah, as Stacey said, I'm going to talk to you about Focus 5, which it's a bespoke training package, if you like, and it's aimed at teachers in years 3, 4 and 5 of their teaching careers, because what we realised is that, again, through COVID, trainee teachers, early career teachers, they were actually getting a pretty raw deal in terms of their training and entitlements. And we really aimed this at the cohort who had just missed out on the early career framework. And actually, it's something that we're looking to take forward, because actually we believe that it's really helping our colleagues to deepen their thinking in terms of technical teaching and learning skills, also things in terms of their subject knowledge, and actually how to effectively engage in professional development. So we used Iris groups as part of this, but as I said, the reason why we did this really was to show our firm commitment as a trust to their professional growth, and that, we really value the training, the reflection that they engage in, certainly now on the ECF. And we want them to deepen that thinking and keep working with us and get the best outcomes for themselves, but also for the students. So I've put, obviously, the rationale on the slide that you can see there. But essentially what we came up with were 3 sessions. And this was based on feedback from our early careers teachers in terms of what they wanted to see next. So session 1 was based around high expectations in our classrooms. So they'd done a lot on behaviour, but they wanted to know what that looked like from a learning and curriculum point of view. The second session was around metacognition. And the third session was about building up your leadership portfolio. So how could you get that tangible impact for moving key ideas forward within, your particular area. And also thinking about those teachers in year 5 who might be thinking about the upper pay scale. And again, what sort of things should they start to bring into their practice to really ensure that they're ready to pass that threshold. So each session had some pre and post reading and also some reflections for next steps. Within our trust, we offer lots of Allevi courses, so Creative Teacher Programme, Outstanding Teacher Programme. And we felt that just by the nature of the fact that the Allevi programme, so much of the content comes from the delegates, we felt that the Focus 5 would actually sit along really nicely, because it's about engaging with the research, what it says, and having that chance to collaborate and discuss, which I'll show you how we did that. And of course, as part of engaging with the research, we got them a subscription to the Chartered College, so they could go back, reflect, and really just cherry pick what was relevant for them, because we were very mindful that we had colleagues attending from special schools, primaries, early years, secondaries. It was a real mix, and we wanted to make sure that actually there was something there for everybody. So as part of the training, obviously, we had the engaging with research aspect of the day, but we also set up some Iris groups. And within that, you can see that it was quite interactive in the fact that there was a rationale about using Iris, and also just that reminder about myth-busting facts, because again, colleagues who were coming on this training were all at a different place in terms of where they were. So it was just great to have that reminder about the trust and almost the safeguarding around Iris, and the fact that you can record with purpose, but you don't have to share it, which I think was a really big reassurance, for some colleagues. So essentially, they got a bit of a reminder just by having access to this platform about key introductions, summary of the sessions, and of course, we have the discussion boards built in. So even after the session, they were able to still collaborate and just talk about anything really, because it's always the same when you go on a full day training. We didn't want them just to leave it there. We wanted them to go away and do something with it. So they had their research input in the morning, collaboration and discussion opportunity, and then we used the afternoon activity to almost have a bit of a coaching session where they just very loosely peer coached each other to really define an action step from the bulk of information that they'd had in the morning. So this is just an example here of how we used everything. So you can see here that this is one here from our session on metacognition, where there was a bit of a session in terms of a pupil book study and looking at that. Then in the afternoon, it was moving the theory to action and really trying to bridge that gap. So we had one of our IRIS colleagues, Katie, come and talk to the delegates about how to use IRIS in a really practical way. And then they had that time in the afternoon to coach each other. And again, we talked about the principles of coaching and the importance behind it. And then, of course, they had that opportunity just to really think about what they were going to put into practice back at base. So it wasn't an isolated one-off. They'd thought about the action research, and then actually they're going to go back to the classroom and trial that out for themselves. So in terms of feedback from colleagues, we got an awful lot. And after every single session, we asked them for some testimonials, evaluation and impact. So there's just a very small snapshot here on the screen of how they were thinking about how they would actually bridge that gap between theory and practice. And we asked them questions such as, what was the most impactful part of the session? How do they intend to collaborate with others next? And also the most recent training on leadership. How will you build your leadership skills next? So you can see here some of the things that they said in terms of building up coaching, looking at the research, and also developing themselves as a leader. And so within all of that training, we had IRIS as the golden thread in terms of that collaboration platform is there for you to keep networking with colleagues who you've actually met on that training day, to keep those conversations going. You've got the opportunity to trial it out if you want to. And of course, it was there to go back and actually look at that recording about the research and the download information again. Again, when you're back at base, and actually just chunk it down so that they had that reflection opportunity there.
Fab, thank you. So just moving forward as a trust, we still have this moral commitment to ensure that we are growing our people, whether they're our future leaders, our coaches within the organisation, and ultimately the teachers and those that work within our support staff roles across the organisation. So joint practice development will continue to grow, and the projects will shape dependent on the priorities of the different academies, but with our ultimate strategic objective of developing a high-performing organisation which has high-performing people. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you so much, both. I was just kind of scribbling away notes there, thinking I'm learning so much from what these fantastic school leaders have been doing. Again, the commitment to collaboration came through really, really strongly. I think, that the people who tend to choose kind of IRIS Connect to work with them on their PD needs have that commitment to collaboration, because it's at the bones of what we do as well. And that autonomy, so it's contextual as well, I think is very important, rather than this very top-down model that you were talking about. So a question that I wanted to ask, really, we've had loads of comments in, I don't know whether you can see them there, excellent presentations, sharing excellence, lots of comments coming in about people having learned so much from these presentations this evening. One quick question that I wanted to ask, I'm very conscious of time, is what challenges did you face as kind of PD leads, if you like, in your trust that IRIS Connect has helped you to overcome?
I think the logistics of traveling around the myth that we can't share best practice because we're not in each other's classrooms day to day. So we have academies across Nottinghamshire. We've got another one in Lincolnshire. And what the platform has allowed us to do is take away that time element of traveling to other schools to be live. You can have the element of being live within the classroom as well. But a click of a button, Vicky, who's 45 miles away from me, can share something. And that was, Iris has really helped us overcome those blockers that really would be a barrier because of the investment of time that staff used to sort of complain around. Staff at our organisation buy into wanting to grow and develop.
Yes.
But you're quite right there, Hailey, that the investment of time and transport was always a blocker of releasing staff to go and share and collaborate. So we found that the Iris Connect platform has really helped us to ensure that can be reduced.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, in the times that we're currently working in, we're in a sort of retention and recruitment crisis, really. We all need that helping hand, don't we, to enable
Absolutely.
those things to happen. Thank you, Vicky and Stacey, again, so much for giving up your time this evening. It's been really appreciated. And I know that all of the people who have tuned in this evening and watch it later on our live stream will really benefit from your expertise and your experience. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. What an amazing event, honestly. I have kind of watched in awe at what all of these fantastic school leaders who are in the ground, you know, on the ground doing all the work with their teachers, really making the difference for students' education. And it's really inspired me, absolutely. And I hope it's also demonstrated to all of you who are watching as well, just how powerful the Iris Connect platform can be as that tool to break down some of the barriers to professional development that we know we come across when we are trying to lead PD at scale in multi-academy trusts. So if you are interested in finding out more, please do get in touch with us for an informal chat and a demo. You can see the details, hopefully, on your screen now about who to get in touch with. Yes, I can see that they're there. And we'll be very happy to have a chat with you and see how we can help you overcome some of the challenges to your context as well. Mostly, though, we wanted this webinar to be a celebration of the incredible things that some of our MAT partners are actually doing across their trusts. And I'm sure that you'll agree that the practice and the commitment that we saw this late afternoon is absolutely incredible. So thanks so much to everyone who took part and everyone who took the time to join us this evening. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.